This guide is going to go over a lot of the basics. These are core components of the game, and even if you are an experienced player, these could be things you are overlooking. If you are new and need some extra coaching and tips, please join the Discord below. You can find help here. Feel free to DM me there as well, and we can potentially set up a time for coaching. If you have any tips you would like to add, please comment below. First and foremost, this is a sandbox arena FPS, and utilizing the environment is extremely important. I highly suggest picking up canisters, throwing them around, throw them at walls, throw them at your enemies, melee them, and then throw them. Learn what these do because there are tons of moments that could make or break a fight by utilizing the environment correctly. As a quick rundown of some of the main use cases for the canisters, the red or explosive canister can blow up walls, players, destroy some players' gadgets, make new entrances, create holes to drop the cash out. The orange or fire canister are good for blowing smaller holes in walls and creating AoE fire, which can remove gas. Green or gas canisters are great for creating big AoE clouds that can damage players over time. The gray or smoke canisters can put out fires, create a visual cover to help aid you and your team. The pink or goo canisters can be used to block entrances, seal up holes, and create platforms to climb on. Make sure to use the map to its fullest. Set up defenses on the high-rise platforms, use explosives to take down high-rise platforms, use the crane to get a good height advantage, turn it to swing the wrecking ball at buildings, or to create bridges to get from building to building safely. Utilize what the world gives you to the fullest. Don't ignore it under the impression that it isn't useful. There's always a use case, and having that knowledge will separate the good from the great players. Weight classes all have their roles, and understanding how they work is essential to thriving in the finals. Light, the most misunderstood class in the game. This class can't straight up 1v1, it can't defend your team, it can't heal, so why use it? Well, its job is to flank. Position yourself behind or to the side of enemies. Stop taking 50-50 fights and only fight when you have the advantage. Use your mobility to outplay your enemy, dashing from one floor to the next. Approaching from a new angle every time you shoot is how you play the class. Getting poke damage and surviving, and then glitch grenading shields to expose them to make them easy kills for your team. The light class is built to break defenses and to pick off stragglers. You can also approach from the back while your teammates are distracting from another angle. Cloaking device is also amazing for flanks and catching players off guard. Then you can grapple to reach higher grounds in order to have positional advantage. Every good light player I have ever seen spends most of their time away from their team, scouting and picking off unsuspecting enemies. It is really important to understand mobility and positioning and how to always fight in your advantage and to not take 50-50s if you want to play the light class. Medium. This class has two main roles, healer or DPS. Bring in the healing beam, and the defib is a very standard way of playing the class. It brings much needed support, and the instant revive can be very clutch in so many situations. Your job typically is to just stay alive. You are most likely going to be the first person targeted because you are the reasons your teammates are not dying. You want to play the DPS style, you could bring the Guardian turret or recon senses. Your positioning is going to be a bit different than the healer variant where you want to position to do DPS. You are not meant to keep your team alive this time. You're meant to delete the other teams. I find this loadout works best when comboed with a healing medium class. Heavy. Heavy classes should often have some of the highest combat score in most games. With the RPG, the C4s, and their capability to throw objects further than anyone in the game, you can do massive burst damage, and your weapons allow you to just keep shooting and melt targets. You lack mobility, so having a teammate that's a medium that can bring jump pads and zip lines can be very, very helpful to support your lack of mobility. Your job typically is to blow stuff out, do really good entry burst damage, and to be the tank, shielding the objectives for your team to secure cash outs. Since you can be caught out rather easily, it's usually important to position yourself next to your teammates, as a good light player can take you out quite easily if you are caught alone. For the game modes, we have the main one, cash out and tournament mode. There's also other modes, but I am simply going to just cover these as this is the main mode of the game. In this game mode, you have to collect cash boxes from vaults in order to deposit them into cash outs. You then have to defend the cash out in order to secure the points. These objectives are very unique and require some understanding in order to defend and steal effectively. When defending, here are some tips to keep in mind. Typically, you want to play off the cash out. Don't stack inside of the room where it is. Play the room above, the building beside it, a floor below, etc. And have a plan for defending. Here are some examples, depending on your weight class. As a light player, playing above the site in order to drop glitch grenades on those stealing can be an effective way to prevent enemies from stealing while they try to use their dome shields and mesh shields. Alternatively, you can play off-site and scout for enemy teams trying to push the site, get into position and pick off one of the enemies to make your team's defense stronger, and to stall the enemies and waste their utility and time to revive that enemy. As a medium healer, stick with your teammates to keep them alive and to provide support where needed. Your job is to make sure your team doesn't get wiped. If you opted for the DPS role, take high ground and shoot players as they approach the cash out. You are kind of like the scout here. If you brought the turret, then position it overlooking the cash out and place all traps you have brought in on the objective and prepare to throw any grenades, again if you brought them onto the objective. Alternatively, you can also be a bit more defensive and bring an APS turret to prevent them from using RPGs, gas grenades, and satchels, stuff like that. As a heavy player, you should most likely be playing the closest to the objective versus your teammates, as you should be the first one to jump on it in situations where it's being stolen. Throw your explosives onto the objective to burst people who steal it. You can also drop dome shields to keep you and your allies alive. You can also use the goo gun to block off entrances in order to stall longer. The heavy class typically is going to be the one that is the first one in to defending and trying to stall the enemies. Now keep in mind, there are so many ways to approach the finals. It is a sandbox game and you are only limited by your creativity. There are some general understandings of how classes can be played, and hopefully these are good baselines, but don't let that stop you from discovering your own tactics. If you want to be a full DPS heavy that doesn't shield, be my guest. And if you want to be a light that tries to be the defensive tank for your team, go ahead and figure it out. New strategies are being created every day and the meta is constantly changing. I haven't found a single team composition or strategy that couldn't be countered. Instead of claiming a team composition or strategy is overpowered, try maximizing the counterplay to that strategy using gadgets that counter theirs. Recently, I even discovered that I can use the APS turret on an object, bring that object around with me. That now counters RPGs that are flying at me, and it can also be used to wipe all the traps on a cash out. A simple tool that basically nobody is using is now countering some of the hardest metas in the game. It only takes a bit of ingenuity to understand that there is a counter to everything. You just have to be smart enough to figure it out. This game is both simple and complex. There are a lot of simple concepts with very complex skill ceilings. You have to have a lot of knowledge to be able to just act on the fly and to thrive in the finals. If you want more guides, be sure to subscribe and like the video, and I will catch you in the next one.